Hello, I'm Howard Schechter, and I'm the proprietor of The Perfect Edge, a business I started about 22 years ago. And I've learned a lot about straight razor honing over the years. To date, I've done over 8,000 straight razors. I do 4 or 5 a day. And you'll learn as you go on. There's definite learning curve with this. If you're just starting out, I recommend that you give yourself a lot of patience and a lot of room to be patient with it, because your honing will get better over time. So what I'm going to focus on right now is a process called setting the bevel, which a lot of people have problems with, but after doing it a number of different ways over the years, here's what I've settled on. I used to use a Shapton 1000 for setting the bevel, but what I found after a while was that the 500 Shapton, 500 grit Shapton, is faster and it produces a great edge. It does not produce what you would expect a 500 edge to produce. It does not chip the blades. I know there are people who are concerned about that, and if it did that, I wouldn't use it. But I use this double thickness Shapton 500 because it's got more weight to it, and because it's double thickness, it's going to last a lifetime. And I would rather use something that is faster than slower for the following reason. The longer you hone, the more possibility is something's going to go wrong. Your muscle will get tired, you'll pull back and hit the blade against the shoulder or the stone. Any number of things can happen, and they've all happened to me. So everything I'm showing you is not opinion or conjecture, it's all based on experience. So when you take a new Shapton stone, or really any stone that you get, they're not flat straight from the factory or from the quarry. And you have to flatten them in order to get the best results. Now what I use is this tool here. It's a precision straight edge. So this is a straight edge. This is a straight razor. And people are always telling me they're shaving with straight edges, and I always wonder how they're doing that, since it doesn't work all that well for doing that. So this is certified flat every inch of the way. And it's a tool that I keep in a box, and it stays flat that way. If you ever drop one of these, they're no longer flat. And what I do is I take the straight edge and I put it on the stone and I hold it up to the light. And if I see light between the straight edge and the stone, I know I have to flatten the stone. And this is all preparation for beveling. If the stone isn't flat, the bevel is not going to be right. So you have to take the stone, put some water on it. Now you notice, see how the water beads up? The new Shaptons, new Nortons will do this also. And that means that the skin of the stone is on there, and that's how you know it's a new stone. That has to come off because it's a different type of a property for honing. I'm going to use the Shapton flattening plate. It's really more than a flattening plate, it's really a lapping plate. And there is a difference between flattening and lapping, and it's a matter of a degree and specification. But this stone from Shapton is extremely flat. It's very expensive. The flatter a stone is, the more expensive it is, because there are more processes in quality control and more rejections. And so this is what I'm going to use to flatten and lap this stone. You notice I'm moving it around because What I don't want to have happen is I don't want the lapping plate to wear down unevenly. Now, when I worked in machine shops, they taught me lapping this way, in a figure eight. And if you look in the machinist books, they'll teach you that. But that is really for a much bigger lapping plate where you can actually do that. On these longer and narrower stones, what you have to do is just do that. Sometimes I flip it around. When you finish this, you see there's a slurry. Let's clean the lapping plate, clean the stone. And then check it again. And that, my friends, is a flat stone. Okay, so let down the stone. Notice it's not bubbling up anymore. Okay, so that means you're down to the actual rated grit of the stone. And I have a razor here that I haven't honed yet. And let's just set the bevel on this. So what I do is I put my 3 fingers just behind the edge. Now I'll go fast because I've got a lot of practice at this, but when you do it at home, go slow. Speed will come as you get more proficient at this. But what's really important, and the reason I do this, is you want to have all the parts of the edge in contact with the stone. If they're not, you'll have problems at the end. Parts of the stone will be, parts of the razor will not be as sharp as the other parts. So I hold it by the bridge here, and I put one finger on the spine, and I go back and forth on the stone. Now, what I'm looking for is the gray steel that's coming off and is on the stone is an even smear across the stone. If it's not, it means that the razor is warped, which pretty much they all are, and you have to put more pressure on one finger than the other. So that's what keeps the edge flat on the stone. Usually it takes about 50 or 60 strokes to do this. Then flip it over, go to the other side, and do that. Just for brevity in doing this video, I'm not going to completely set the bevel because it would just be too tedious. Watching somebody hone is like watching carrots grow. So we'll take the razor now, and what I do is I examine it under this microscope. This is a Carson micro. I get them at Amazon for about $15. Takes one battery. It's an LED light, and it goes from 60x to 120x. I usually use it at about 100x, and I just determined that empirically over time. If you're not using a microscope to examine the edge, you're really missing out. The microscope really informs your honing. So I start at the heel. You put this onto the spine and the edge. Put your finger here, and that way you can keep it in the field without having to fool around too much. So I'm looking at the edge, and I'm seeing some burr on the edge, and that means that I've got both sides done. And then what I'll do is I'll joint this. So jointing is counterintuitive, and when I do this to people, in front of people, uh, they usually gasp. So with just the weight of the razor, from heel to toe, I do one stroke down the shoulder of the blade of the stone. And then I do 4 push strokes, and that gets rid of the burr. Now the burr is very different on a straight razor than it would be on a knife or a chisel, wood chisel, something like that. Instead of it curling up, what it does is it sticks straight out if you've done your bevel setting right. And you got to get that stuff off. And that's what the jointing does and the 4 push strokes. I'll examine it again. And I'm seeing a beautiful bevel, and then blackness. No flashy burr on the edge. And that, my friends, is how we set a bevel on a straight razor. Thank you.